beautiful day here. It might be drizzling a little bit down at the coast, but that's the way it goes at this time of year. You just never know exactly what you're going to get. It's a mixed bag. We do have a caller on the line. We have Bill on the line. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Ken, and Dawn, if you're listening. I got a question about grass.
Yep.
I planted grass in the fall last year, and in January I noticed, geez, that's where I planted the grass to be growing.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to know, what's the minimum ground temperature that I could put seed down in? Because we're going to have such warm days.
Yeah.
I know the ground temperature makes a difference, but what's the minimum before I start wasting my seed?
Well, that's an excellent question. With grass seed, over the years, we've put it down in all kinds of different conditions, even sometimes right over top of the snow. We just apply it because the grass seed, when it's cold, it's fine. It just stays dormant. And then, as it works its way down to the soil surface, if you're putting it in snow, eventually it would hit the surface. It doesn't just have to be wet or moist. It needs to have a bit of warmth before it germinates.
Yeah.
So if you do get one of those days where it kind of warms up a little bit, and you get some sun on the lawn, and the earth gets a little bit warm, then as long as it has a bit of moisture, it'll generally germinate. And so putting some down early is not a bad thing. And it's just that realistically, you're going to get germination right around the end of March and into early April. That's sort of typical for the Okanagan. And
that's what I was going to get at. Was I know what was typical, but things are different now. Everything's warmer. It all seems like the grass that was growing in the front yard. I'm like, this is January. Grass doesn't grow in January, but it does.
It's weird, yeah. No, you're absolutely right, and it's one of these things that when you do apply seed and it starts to germinate and everything's good, then all of a sudden, because of the weird weather, we get this blast of -10 or something. You can freeze the little seedlings as they're germinating. Okay. So they're okay to freeze a little bit, like down to -5. I don't think would hurt them at all, but you just never know what you're going to get these days. So to play it safe, you'd probably apply it around the end of March, and then that would give you some cool temperatures. And then as you get some sunny days, a little bit of moisture, it'll be perfect for germination. So,
all right then.
All righty.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thanks for calling in. Yeah, you too. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, there you go. Talking about lawns, we're heading that direction. And there's a lot of things that do affect the lawns. This year, we haven't had as much snow as we've had in the past. But when you get snow, you generally get snow mold. So you'll get these different types of molds and fungus that may grow in the lawn due to the soggy conditions. And depending on the temperatures and all that, that can be a factor. So when you do see those things, if they do pop up, generally a good idea is to take pictures so that you just have sort of a record of what you're seeing. And just because, as it advances, as you go into the month of, say, May or into that timing, it may be almost not necessarily too late, but it's really at this time of year or in March when you'll see these patches, and you'll see dollar spot, which will be just a small patch, or you'll see the snow mold, which will be sort of a blotch of really bright sort of white color. And then you'll also see a fusarium patch, which is a little bit bigger. They often call it frog's eye because it has sort of this strange shape like the pupil of a frog, if you've ever looked at a pupil of a frog. But fusarium patch is a fairly major problem that happens. But, any of these things, that's why we're here on the show, is that if you do, run into trouble with something like that and you want to see what you can do to maybe help to prevent it, or, sometimes there's some treatments that can be done, but best thing is just to identify it and keep the lawn aerated. I like to just give the lawn a good hard raking in the spring. That's where often you'll hear a power raking that gets done. And the power raking, when you take the machine out and it's got tines underneath and they kind of scrape the surface of the soil, it helps to break up the thatch. That would be dead roots on the surface of the soil. And that also helps to alleviate a lot of these fungus diseases. The diseases sometimes start in the dead roots on the surface, which is called thatch. And so the dethatcher, or the power rake, which is basically the same idea. There's sort of two different machines, but they're really doing the same thing. So the power rake is fine. It's got little blades on it that cuts into the ground a bit and disturbs it. Again, it gets air in there. You get that nice fresh air circulation. I like to do it just in the very first signs that the lawn is sort of drying out a little bit. But that can be difficult depending on what climate you live in. But yeah, so in other words, the earliest you can do it with the ground being just slightly on the dry side, if at all possible. So there you go. Fertilizers can go down just about any time early. Remember that most of your fertilizers are temperature release, so they will often not really release much until it starts to warm up a bit. And so they can go on a little bit early. I still really aim for around that end of March as a timing, depending where you are and the weather conditions. Remember that a nice, healthy, strong lawn helps to combat the weeds that might show up. So just as a heads up, that if your lawn is struggling and it's starving and it's having a hard time to grow, well, that's when weeds will really come in and take over. So it's kind of this balancing act of just keeping it to a reasonable condition for sure. Yeah, so talking about lawns in February. Wow, what's that about, eh? Well, today really is more about seeding. Well, there we just talked about seeding lawns. And seeding different types of vegetables. And so I have several different sort of thoughts in my mind as we head into spring here about what I want to achieve. And so I sort of have these different groups of plants. Some of them are really, let's say, warm season crops that you need to start early because they're so slow growing and they take so long to come through to fruition. And some of those things may be something like celery, for example. Now, celery, even though you'd think it would like to be cold, it really doesn't like to be too cold. It can be a little cooler than, say, tomato plants or eggplants, that sort of thing. But if you want to grow nice celery, you actually want to get it seeded fairly soon here around the end of February and get it started indoors under grow lights and just grow little seedlings along, and they'll happily just go for the ride. And then once you get into about the middle, for us in the Okanagan, about the middle of May, maybe at the coastal, depending on the weather conditions, it needs to be a bit warm at night. Typically that's sort of 7 degrees Celsius, something like that at night. And then you could put the celery out and get it planted, and a little bit of a cold frame or a little bit of plastic over top would help to keep them warm a little bit, especially at night, and that would help those plants to get going. But that's specifically celery. Now, other plants that are also long crops. So celery is typically that 100 to 120 days before you're really harvesting, but well worth it. The best celery you've ever had if you haven't grown celery yourself. It is so good to go out and chop some celery, bring it into the house and use it. It's so nice to pick it straight from the garden. Other crops that are these warm crops, so in other words, we can't get them out early, but we need to start them early. And that's just so that, because again, we're over that 100 days. And that was my tip of the week this week was, identify those plants that might be long crops to grow and get them going early so that you can start adding or subtracting from that 100 days or 120 days, whatever it is. So some of the plants would be like peppers. So everything from the green peppers can be started right now indoors, and also the hot peppers. You could even start hot peppers right at the beginning of February, but again, now would be fine as well. So if you like those really super hot ghost peppers and that sort of thing, you definitely want to get those going now. And again, a little grow light is super helpful, and a little heating pad underneath. Those heating pads help to germinate the seeds. And with some of these warm plants, they actually don't mind if they stay sitting on the heating pad. Whereas cooler plants, which we'll talk a little bit about these cold-loving plants. Those plants really, as soon as they germinate on the heated pad, you remove them and get them cooled down because they don't like to be too hot. So these warm crops are plants like this, like I mentioned peanuts off the top of the on my tip of the week here. And peanuts are one of these things that, again, you want to get going a little bit early. Some varieties are as little as about 100 days. maybe slightly less than that. But many of them are over that 120 or 130 days. So what you want to do is get those started anytime in February. It can be early or late, depending on your condition, what you've got set up. I have a little, again, heating pads and a little grow light over top. So then that allows me to get those peanuts up and going. I haven't even bought mine yet. You have to buy them early because they do tend to sell out. So you buy them as seeds in the garden centers, and you'll see the little packages of peanuts, and you got to get them in right away. They have a tendency to go moldy and rot out a little bit, so you have to kind of get them in, and always seed more than what I need, and then that way I always make sure I get enough to plant out. I find typically maybe 8 or 10 plants is ample. And you can actually grow them in containers as well outside, where they can actually survive right in the pot itself, and the pot gets nice and warm because it's up out of the ground early. But when I say early, I mean end of May. So with a lot of these warm-loving plants, some things even like broad beans or eggplant, especially eggplant, you want to get started right now, and don't put it out until the very end of May or even early June. Just because they love the heat and the warmth and they can't stand to be cold. So we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through the show here, but we will be taking another short break right now. And then after the break, if all goes well, I believe we'll have Dan Bruce calling in with some information for us. And so, we'll take another short break here, and we'll be back right after these messages with more of The Garden Show. Alrighty, we are back with you, and we do have a special caller on the line. We have Dan Bruce on the line. Good morning, Dan. How are you?
I'm well.
Nice.
Things are okay.
That's great.
I am getting a little concerned about the accumulation of dead brush on my property, because we're supposed to be doing and taking care of wildfire mitigation, but under the present circumstances, that is impossible.
Impossible at the moment. I know we did have one day this week.
One day,
that was it.
And I got some of it done, but nothing near enough.
No, I know. I'm the same. I'm doing some land clearing that we have to do, and it's a challenge.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
When I first moved to Kelowna, discovered Burnett's nursery there on Ethel.
We're on Ethel, yeah.
They one of the first things that Ernie Burnett sold me was a rose, and it was Hansa.
Oh yes,
an old rugosa rose. It was raised in Germany in 1905. Which was the same year that Kelowna became a city.
Oh, interesting.
Anyway, this Hansa rose is very hardy, flowers really well. It's a good garden plant for the background.
Right.
Because if you've got a Hansa rose flower in your hand, it looks like, well... messed up Kleenex.
Yeah.
It's not a classic rose shape.
Right.
But it certainly produces a lot of flower. So I say it's a good thing for the background. The only thing about it is it doesn't do really well unless the soil is good.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit fussy that way.
Right, but they're fairly drought tolerant, though, too, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. They're tolerant of a lot of things, but they do like good soil. Anyway, the Hansa was named after the Hanseatic League, which was a 12th century trading consortium that was started in northern Germany and operated in and around the Baltic and the North Sea. Right. The Hanseatic League merchants were sort of an association. It was sort of like a union. They all supported and helped out each other. And they had a very good reputation for, good quality goods and honest service and, reliability.
Nice.
So, they established a trading post in London, and it was called the Steel Yard, and they the English referred to them as the Easterlings because they came from the east. Simon Winchester, in one of his books, tries to claim that is the origin of the word sterling. It's Easterling.
Oh.
But I think old Simon said gone off the rails a little bit there. Very interesting and highly respected author, but I think that time he's maybe a little bit wild.
Right. It's been known to happen.
It's been known to happen. Even I do it sometimes.
Oh, for sure. Me too.
But what is interesting is that the reputation of this trading group continues on through time. So, I mean, if you fly a German national airline, you fly Lufthansa.
Right.
That's where it comes from.
Oh, that's interesting. It is really a beautiful rose, especially from, like you say, a little bit of a distance. And I find I don't really do anything with them. I just, sometimes if I want to be really picky, I'll deadhead them, but I even like the rose hips that come on they can be attractive as well.
Yes. Well, if you deadhead them, then you don't get those.
Right.
But they don't require a lot of, fussing and care.
No, and they get to be quite large, so you just allow for that when you're planting and just let them do their thing. And I used to rejuvenate maybe about every 5 or 6 years. I'd go in and just cut the whole thing right down, and it would just shoot up again, all beautiful new growth, and it took another 4 or 5 years to get back to its full glory,
Yeah, well, I with roses like that, what I do is I cut out, about a third of the stems, and then. So you don't have a sudden great gap, but you still get the rejuvenation.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's sort of typical of cane shrubs, right? Is that we take out some of the old stuff and let the new stuff grow in. Yeah.
But if you're dealing with Hansa or those rugosa roses, you need gloves.
Oh, they have a lot of thorns.
Yeah.
A lot. It's comparative to other roses. I don't know what's worse, is having a thorn every inch or so, or having just a solid mass of thorns where you can't see any stem.
Well, of course, the inch or so ones, they lull you into a false sense of security, and you just got to grab a hold of it, and all of a sudden you realize it's got teeth.
Yeah. Yes. Yep, a little bit of pain and agony goes a long ways. When it comes to roses, that's sort of par for the course from time to time, but having a good pair of rose gloves is really important.
Yes, I have several pairs of gloves that work, and I also have a pair of those leather cuffs that I used to use when I worked at Nicola Ranch, and you stick your whole hand through the thing, and it makes an armor protection on your wrist and up your forearm. Right. And I found those were really good because you can just manhandle a rose any way you want, and it can't get you.
Yeah, they're fabulous. And what about the gloves themselves? Did you tell me one time that goatskin gloves were good? But I can't remember how that worked out.
I don't know about that, but any of the likely places have quite reasonably priced gloves. They have a rubberized sort of grip on the inner pad is rubberized, and the back of the hand is fabric. And I found that they look thin, they look kind of flaky, but in fact that rubberized inner surface really turns almost every rose thorn.
Well, that's good news.
And they're cheap, I mean, they wear out fairly quickly. I mean, I would go through 2 or 3 pairs in a season, but it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. Well, it's nice to talk roses. It's that time of year. It's coming up, and traditionally we've trimmed roses in the springtime, but there's a sort of different types of roses, and some of them you cut hard to promote growth, and other ones you just kind of let them go. I can remember you used to have your David Austin roses, and you would literally, a lot of them, just let them do their thing. Whatever they grew that's how they grew.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they were quite spectacular. Some of them got to be quite large, but wow, when they bloomed, it was unbelievable.
Well, I'm quite pleased with the Othello rose that we've had here since 1986. And David Austin's catalog says that it gets to about 4 feet high and 3 feet wide or something like that. But Othello here got to 17 feet.
Yeah.
Went up the pole right beside the veranda and up onto the upper floor.
Do you think David's talking about cutting it off at the ground and then it grows up to 4 feet in that first year and then you cut it to the ground next year?
I actually got in touch with David Austin and I asked him, I said, what, this is not a complaint, believe me, but what's going on here? Because I've got Othello, it's just towering 17 feet in the air. And he replied and said that he had a number of comments from people living in western North America, so from British Columbia down into California, where they were saying about the same thing, that some of his roses on the west coast of North America do very different things than they do in England.
Yeah, and do you think there's also a factor too when you're grafting roses? Often they're grafting onto seedling varieties, and every once in a while you get a seedling that's extra vigorous, and maybe that would push it, and make it grow faster. Do you think maybe? Possible?
Well, it's possible. But then a lot of the David Austin roses that I have dealt with are on their own roots.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I wonder if yours was.
Well, trust me, I'm not going to mess with it and find out. It is not broke. I'm not going to fix it.
There you go. That's awesome. Okay, Dan. Well, hey, that's great. Hey, I really, really appreciate you calling in today.
All right.
Yes.
Well, as I said, when you book your flight on Lufthansa, remember that name has a long history.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I had no idea. That is fabulous. Okay, well, thanks, Dan. Right. We'll talk to you again next week. Have a pleasant week.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye. There you go. Yeah, so Dan Bruce, and he always has something interesting to talk about. All righty, we're going to take another short break here, and we do invite your calls. 1-888-780-4273 if you're calling long distance, or if you're local, 250-862-2525. And we'll be back right after these messages with more of The Garden Show. Alrighty, welcome back. It's a lovely day to be gardening. I just wish we could get rid of a bit more of the snow. And, it's getting close. But I would say, in the Victoria area, you should be able to get a lot of the cold crops out. I say cold crops. Remember, there's cole crops, like C-O-L-E. And then there's cold crops, C-O-L-D. Now, I don't know. Cole crops are brassicas, so it's part of the cabbage family, and they're typically the taller, skinnier varieties, and often grown in farmers' fields, that sort of thing, and grown for their seed, or there's lots of uses for those cole crops. But I say cold crops because some plants and some vegetables just love to grow cold. They don't like the heat. Once it gets hot out, they're done for the season, and so in coastal regions you can start your cold crops or plants that love to grow cold quite early, like right now, and you can grow those right through into June and July. It just depends. Like in coastal regions, the temperatures are much more subdued. They're not as extreme as they are here in the Okanagan. In the Okanagan, by the time we're into May, we're sometimes up to 40 degrees Celsius. It's too hot, and those plants just bolt and go to seed. So we'll definitely keep talking a little bit more about this, the differences between these sort of cool-loving crops and plants that love the heat. So, so stay tuned, and we'll definitely talk some more about that. But right at the moment, we're going to go back to the phone lines and just see who we have on the line here. Sorry for the delay there, folks. It looks like Mike. Hello, Mike. Are you there from Victoria?
I am here, and good morning to you and all your listeners.
Good morning to you, too.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I just finished pruning my raspberry canes from last year, and it struck me that probably 75% of them were all kind of like stunted, under 3 feet, 2 feet, and wondering if that's a weather phenomena or there's something that I could do to make sure this year's canes come up and are good and tall. So that's number one. The second one is I have an olive tree, which is a decorative one, but it's been around the property for I don't know how long, well over a decade. But this past winter with this cold snap we have, I see all the leaves, you just touch it and the leaves are all falling off. And I'm wondering if that the leaves will regenerate themselves, or am I going to have to remove the tree?
Let's just start with the olive first. And what I would do is you really just have to wait it through. And it's just that some of these species will be a little bit on the evergreen side. And when you get to, some of the weird temperatures we've been having, that they may start to shed prematurely. And you may also end up with some dead wood in that tree as well. And so I would say just hang in there until we get into, a little bit more into the season, and maybe when you start to see any new leaves coming up. And hopefully what happens is that you've got sort of these groups where you'll have, sort of a couple branches here or there that might have died, maybe from the cold or from the drought last year. And you can cut those ones out, and as long as you've got some reasonable live branches, then you're fine to just let it grow back, and they should regrow. But if I've even had trees. How big is the trunk on the olive?
Oh, in diameter, it's about 4 inches wide, I guess.
Okay, so it's fair size. So even if all the branches were to die off the tree, but the main trunk survived and was still alive, you could still actually bring it back to being a tree again by just trimming off all the dead stuff and then wait for shoots to come. And then all those shoots shoot up and they kind of look bad hair day and all that. But then you can go through and selectively save a few of them and start to train it back into being a tree. So all is not lost yet, but let's see if it actually survives and then go from there.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. Thanks for that.
And then with the raspberries, again, I think it was a heat issue from last summer that it seemed to really stunt a lot of the raspberries. Do you normally irrigate your raspberries, or are they just on their own? Or
no, it's about 40-foot long bed, and I've got drip irrigation running through the bed, so I do irrigate them. So and
it's sounding like. Do you know, are they everbearing or are they June-bearing varieties? Do you know? Usually the June-bearing ones get really big.
Yeah, there's two of them, actually. I've got half of the bed in everbearing and half the bed in June berries. And I would say, without counting, that the everbearing are the ones that are, the most stunted.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've noticed the same thing here, is that I was just out looking at a bunch of the everbearing, and they also had some June-bearing. And the June-bearing were okay. They still weren't full size, and they didn't look robust. But the everbearing ones were definitely looked scraggly and scrawny. So the only thing I would say is that, giving them some food right out of the gate in the springtime would be wise, and that will generally get them up and going. So feeding is key. And then with the water situation, it sounds like you're probably okay for water. But the raspberries really respond well if they get food and water at the same sort of time. But the excessive heat in the summertime, it just knocks them for a loop. When they're supposed to be sending out new shoots for the next year, they just don't just don't shoot. It's just too warm or too much heat, and so they don't. They're kind of a crop that if you could grow it up north, they just seem to thrive sometimes in really cold climates. And it's just, I guess they know the on-off switch. Okay, now it's winter, now it's spring, and away they go, and they shoot and grow beautiful, and up to about 8 feet, some of those, and then you can go through and trim them off at 5 feet, say your June-bearing ones, and then, there's it's just sort of a different ball of wax. But I would say that would be just your best bet for this year, is just to start out with a good fertilization, probably by the beginning of April. And that way, they've got something to start with. And just as a vegetable-type fertilizer, there's many different forms available, so find which one you're happiest with. And, it should be good. Should be good to go. And then if it's forecasted to be another really hot season, so if that is the case, then, we're just going to have to go with the flow.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good advice. I appreciate that.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for calling in.
All right.
Okay,
bye
thanks,
for now.
Mike. Yeah, bye-bye. All righty. There you go. And sounds like, what do we have? We have Don back on the line. Hello, Don. Are you there?
Hey, Ken. We are here on the bus just about getting to the show this morning. We got a great driver, and guess what his name is? Tom Jones.
No way.
Tom Jones driving our bus.
Holy, that's amazing.
We haven't heard the tune yet, but we will, I think.
He'll sing for you later.
Everybody say hi to Ken.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So anyway, buddy, have a good show. We're gonna have a good day at the show again, and I wish you were all here.
Yeah, it would sure be fun.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you guys have a good one. Okay, take lots of pictures. Bye-bye.
Bye, Ken.
Bye. There you go. Yeah, it is a lot of fun, especially when you go down with a group, down to the show, on the bus. You get to meet everybody, you get to know everybody, and there's quite a bit of camaraderie, and people all help each other, and it's really fun to, again, when you go to the hotel, as Don's doing, and every morning you just walk out, the bus is sitting there waiting for you, hop on, takes you to the show, and everything's included for all your tickets and everything to get into the show. And it's fabulous. It's great. You could spend an entire week there, and I think the 3 days that you get is I guess it's 2 days. You can get like a half a day on the first day if you like, but yeah, whatever. It's never quite enough. There's so much to see. I think it would take a full week. But, thanks so much for people who called in the first half of the show. It was great. We were able to talk about roses. We talked about lawns. We talked about raspberries. We talked about some olive trees. And, we're talking about vegetables and seeding, that sort of thing. It's just like a regular garden show. There you go. Well, give us a call, though, for sure. Write the number down so you have it ready and get it on your speed dial. So, again, if you're calling long distance, 1-888 780-4273, and if you're calling locally, 250-862-2525 to get through to the garden show, and we'll do our best to answer all your questions and get you off to a good start this spring. It's so exciting, lots of seeding going on, and that's what I'm doing, and Wendy's at home right now. I bet you she's seeding something today. It's a little early for those warm crops unless you have really good grow lights. But all the cold things are fabulous, and that's what we're going to talk about when we get back after this break, is we're going to start to delve into the cold-loving plants, and you just wouldn't believe how many different types of plants love to grow cold, and they literally hate the heat. So that's one of the things that is kind of a little bit challenging, but once you get your list together, then you pick your favorites and get on the early, and you try them each year and see how it goes. But as soon as they're up and going, you can get them outside into a cold frame, or you can get them straight out into the garden. A little bit of protection is sometimes helpful for sure, and it's just a fun thing to do. I love to get the garden going early. Alrighty, so thanks very much again for the first half of the show, and we'll be back right after these messages with the second half of the garden show. Thanks for listening. Alrighty, we are back with you, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Gardening season is happening all around us, and I just can't wait to get some stuff out into the garden for sure. Looks like we have a caller calling in. Is it Alicia? Good morning, Alicia.
Good morning. How are you, Ken?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine. And I like your little lead-in about it's spring and we're getting ready for spring. And what better way than to come to our event called Gardening into the Future?
Right,
Yeah. So a week from today, right?
Yeah. Now, can you fill me in a little bit on how the ticket sales are? Because I was saying that we're getting close to as far as the events go, but I'm not sure. Can people just show up, or what's the status?
Well, it's a two-part event. We're selling tickets to the speaker part, which is, as you know, it's yourself, and you'll be talking about vegetable gardening, right? Mm-hmm. And then we're going to have Sig Kendrick from OXA, from the Okanagan Xeriscape Association, talking about the future of sustainable gardening. And Mario Lantier will be talking about plant health care. And Laverne DeJager will be showing us how to pot up wonderful plants in containers. So that part of the event, you do have to buy tickets for, and the tickets are available on Eventbrite. And we're getting pretty close to getting sold out. So I think if anybody wants to get in on those talks, it should be pretty quick. Mm-hmm. But there's another part to the event. When you come into the Trinity Church, there's a huge lobby, and we're filling that up with exhibits, all to do with gardening.
Oh,
and
there you go.
That is free to the public. So the public is more than welcome to come in and have a chat with all the various exhibitors.
Well, that is fabulous. That sounds like a lot of fun, and I think it's going to be busy.
I hope so. I
think it will.
We have some demonstrations lined up. We've got the Master Gardeners are going to show seed starting. The Floral Art Club is going to do some plant flower arranging. Laverne is actually going to do up some small containers during the day out in the public area. And then, of course, he'll do the grand containers at his talk in the afternoon. Nice. There's a lady called Heather Doheny that's going to be talking about kitchen composting. She's got a really great method of composting. I've got a young lady that's going to be, she's an arborist, and she's going to do some pruning demonstrations, cocodamel walls, like all that kind of stuff. But you know, Ken, what is really interesting that I have found in talking to these different exhibitors that are coming is that they love to talk gardening. It's their passion, and they're more than happy to share their knowledge.
Absolutely. Well, that is so much fun, and I'm looking forward to, I think I'll be maybe hanging out with the Master Gardeners, I think. That's what my plan is. So I'm going to try to get there after I do the radio show here in the morning, and then head down and join up with the Master Gardeners for a bit, answer some questions, and then get ready for my talk at 1 o'clock.
That's right. And the best part is that Don Burnett is going to be the MC, the host of the whole thing, right?
Yes, that's right. So he'll be there early in the morning.
Yeah, so all the who's who of the gardening world are going to be there, right?
There you go. Fabulous. Well, that's great. Well, that's just so awesome for you to call in. I was thinking about it, and I had that question about the tickets and just wondering if there were still a few for the talks available. And that also, the price of that includes lunch as well for that part of the
it does.
session.
It includes a lunch. Unfortunately, when the public comes in, there's not going to be any food for them. So hopefully they fill up their tummies ahead of time. But you know what? They'll come in and they'll have such a fabulous time just looking at all the exhibits. And, of course, the ticket holders will have time to browse through the exhibits in between the talks as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that sounds great, and we'll keep talking about it, and we'll fill that church up. And where's the location? It's right on Springfield and Spall, right?
Yeah, Spall. That's correct.
Right on the corner, yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Beautiful facility.
Okay. Yes, it is.
All right,
nice
thanks.
And bright.
Thanks, Alicia. Okay. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Okay.
Have a great.
You too. Talk again soon. Bye-bye. All righty, we have Sharon on the line. Good morning, Sharon from
Good morning. Good morning to you, Ken, and to Dawn. I think Dawn might be listening on the bus.
Maybe, yeah.
All the bus people. It's too bad. Alicia's having her garden show and exhibit and talk in Kelowna, right?
Yeah, that's right.
When are they coming to Victoria?
Well, that's a good question.
Okay,
but,
I do have a question, though. I got myself one of these plants last Saturday. It's called Clivia, Clivia.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And it usually blooms once a year around the lunar new year, mind you, that's all different times of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a beautiful picture on the front. I always only get one bloom. This one has 2, 4, 6, 8 blooms on it. And the name of the plant, I guess it's like the species, the whatever.
Yep.
I learned that from you guys, but I have it in the wrong order. It's called Clivia, Clivia, and the second word is Minata, Miniata.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a type, or is there more than one kind of Clivia or whatever?
Is this an orange-flowered one?
Yes, it says orange flower. Have you seen other colors? That's the only color I've seen.
Yeah, I'm racking my brain, but I have grown Clivias over the years quite a bit, and I have a nice one now, and it's always beautiful, blooming usually in right around the end of May for me.
Oh,
being in the house and whatnot through the winter. I've had it for years, so it's kind of it's adapted to my household, and so then I kick it outside in around the end of May, and the coolness I think at night out when it goes outside triggers it to flower. And just beautiful. But I have a faint memory of seeing a yellow one.
Oh.
So but it's just a memory. Maybe I was just dreaming, but I'm pretty sure I can see it in the back of my mind when I used to work in a tropical greenhouse, and we had a whole section of clivias, and then they had just a few of these yellow ones, but I'm not sure.
Are they difficult to grow? Are they a bulb, or what are they? A tuber, a bulb?
Yeah, they're a bulb, and they're sort of like, but not as drastic, but like a hippeastrum or amaryllis type.
Where they have amaryllis.
Yeah, but they're related, but they're different. They're evergreen, so they don't die back as much. I mean, you can cut off leaves from time to time, but it's not, they're not too difficult. They like to dry out between waterings a little bit. They don't like to be soggy, but they're pretty durable. They seem to like good bright light.
Oh, they like bright light? Okay. Mm. And why did yours bloom more than just in May, like once a year? And did you have more than one bloom on yours?
Yeah, I had. They'll come up with a stem, sort of like an amaryllis or a hippeastrum, and it sends up a single stem with about 5 blooms on it.
Oh,
and
wow!
Then this year I got 3 stems out of mine, and so it was quite beautiful. But it does only bloom the once. And then it will bloom again, hopefully this year, in the beginning of June. That timing for me.
Yeah, the flower is beautiful. I bought it at the plant shop. And the strangest thing with the tag, it is a product of Canada that is non-GMO, but it says zone 9 to 11, keep above 5 degrees centigrade or 41 Fahrenheit. Yeah. Isn't zones are only for outdoor plants?
Well, they can be grown. They grow outdoors where they're from, So then if you lived down in Florida, they would be a landscape plant, for example.
Oh, so almost like poinsettias or poinsettias, whatever you call them, Christmas plants?
Well, all tropical plants that you would buy from stores, they originate from a forest somewhere. And it's usually the Amazon or, Central America or sometimes in Africa and areas where it's warm and humid, depending on the plant. So that's what's fun about this is always do a little bit of research on where that plant originated from. Mm-hmm. So you can do a little research on Clivia, and it will tell you where they originated and, what they're related to. And guaranteed it doesn't freeze wherever they came from.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, 5 degrees Celsius is their minimum.
Yeah, so in other words, when you take yours outside in May, it's way above 5 then, right?
It's at the end of May, yeah.
So zone 9 to 11, what temperature is that?
That's minimum winter temperature of about, I think it is about 5 degrees.
Okay, and what's the hottest they can take?
I don't think there's a limit on the heat. I think they can go until they burn up, but they don't die. As long as they get a little bit of water, they're generally okay. I grow them in part shade outside. Like I have a pergola that is kind of shaded a little bit, and I put it in, where there's dappled light. There's direct sunlight coming in, but it's just, I grow it on the floor like a ground plant.
Oh, so it's in the ground. So in the winter in Kelowna, it doesn't go to minus.
No, it's not outside. It's inside in the wintertime. I just grow it in a pot on the ground.
Oh, you put the pot out in the ground in May.
Yeah.
I get it. And what kind of potting soil? Do you ever have to repot a Clivia?
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah, they can get quite large eventually. And, I just use regular potting soil. They're not particular, that's for sure.
They don't need cactus soil or anything like that?
Nope. Just regular houseplant soil. It's fine.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, there you go.
Hopefully I have more than one. It has one stem, and it's beautiful, the buds right now.
Right.
And I have another one, and it only gives me one stem also. And then when the picture, I guess it was for illustration only on the label.
Right.
And it's got like 8 or 10 big blossoms there, stems, and each stem has maybe 10 or 12.
Yeah,
flowers.
it's all about the conditions that they're growing in, and if you've got that green thumb, you should be able to get it to produce more stems, and it takes a few years.
Really?
The one that I had originally was about 3 feet in diameter, and I chopped it into chunks and divided it. And then I, made a bunch of smaller plants and gave them away to a few friends, and I just kept one for myself. And so right now it's about maybe 18 inches in diameter, the foliage and everything. It's quite pretty. I love it.
Yeah, that's quite pretty too.
There you go.
Yours is orange, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's probably
that's
a
a standard
common color for that kind of plant.
Yes, that's standard color, yeah.
But if it's a bulb like a tulip or a daffodil, how can you cut it? You need the little bulblets to transplant, don't you?
They break apart. Like they have long, slender bulbs rather than round, big, fat bulbs. So, yeah, you can just pull them apart.
Great. Thank you so much.
Right.
You guys are so informative. I think I have 2 green thumbs almost.
There you go. Awesome.
Thank you
way
so
to go,
much, Ken. Have a great day.
You too. All right.
Okay,
have fun.
bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. There you go. And we do have actually Dawn calling in. I'm wondering, should we wait till after the break or we can go ahead with Dawn? All right. Well, welcome to the show, Dawn, from Central Okanagan Heritage Society.
Morning, Ken.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. A day like this, you can't be not doing well.
Yeah, we're lucky. We got a little bit of sun today. It's really nice.
So Dawn had asked me to phone in and give you an update on Heritage Week that's coming up next week. It's actually some of the events are starting today, but it officially runs from Monday to Saturday next week.
Fabulous. And what kind of events are happening this year?
Well, it's the Heritage Week is put on by a large collection of different groups. Sponsored by the City of Kelowna. We have the big kickoff breakfast scheduled for Monday from 10 to 3 at the foyer of the Community Theatre. There'll be displays from some of the different groups. There'll be hot chocolate and cider. Today, the Italian Club is doing the presentation of the Ramponi event. It's a film, I believe it's at the college. And during the week, there's other events. The Genealogical Society is doing I think it's a Zoom presentation so you can find out about your heritage. The Heritage Society is doing the annual awards on Wednesday night. And during the week, the different partners like the museum, the library, have different things going on at their sites.
Oh, very nice.
It's a celebration of a national event, and it's a chance for people to get a bit of an idea of the past of Kelowna and to get out and see what some of the different organizations are doing.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Is there a website or something where they might be able to catch up on a little bit of information? Or
absolutely. So if people still get the Courier, there's a full-page ad in today's Courier that outlines the events. But if you want to go to the Central Okanagan Heritage Society, just type in COHS Kelowna, and all the events are listed there. COHS
Kelowna.
Yes.
.com or?
If you just type in COHS, it pops up. The website will come up, and they're all listed there.
Fabulous. Well, that's great, Don. I really appreciate you calling in. That gives us a good update, and I'll mention it again before the show's out. And we'll hopefully have a really good week and get a lot of people out and have some fun and learn about the heritage of the Okanagan.
You bet.
All right.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Don. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All righty, we're going to take a short break here, and when we get back, we'll talk more about seeds and cold crops and all that stuff, all the great gardening stuff. And on that note, we'll be back with the Garden Show right after this short message. Welcome back. We're going straight to the phone lines. We have Vicky on the line from Kelowna. Good morning, Vicky.
Good morning. Yesterday I started testing my tomato seeds to see what ones were viable.
Yeah.
And what I'm wondering is my tomatoes get so tall, where do I trim them out to keep them kind of bushy?
Well, yeah, that's a bit difficult depending on the variety. Sometimes you want to maintain sort of a central leader on the plant, and it's okay if they get quite tall. You just want to maybe stake them up when they're young. But the key is, are these some of these seedlings are sort of stretching a bit? Is that what's happening, or?
No, I haven't. No, it's when they're in the garden.
It's when they're in the
start
garden.
out, maybe 6 or 8 inches tall. Like I grow them in the house.
Yeah.
But then sometimes they're like 5 feet tall.
Yeah.
And they're very branchy, and I don't have stakes tall enough.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if when they're maybe 2 feet tall, is there a place I can nip them so that they get more bushy than tall?
Well, you can. The thing that happens with tomatoes is there's sort of 2 different types. One of them is determinate, and that just means it's only going to grow to a certain size and for a certain length of time, and it's going to only produce those flowers, and then that's it, and then it stops.
Okay.
But the other ones that are indeterminate are ones that just keep growing and blooming and growing and blooming. And so when you cut them off, you're sort of cutting off the flowers because they bloom on the tips. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can just cut it off wherever you want to keep the plant a certain size. Generally, what we do is we try to do a little bit of research and find the variety that would sort of fit what you want. And if you say, gee, I want to have this tomato, I want to have a good size fruit, but I don't really want it to be too tall, maybe 24 to 30 inches would be maximum, and then you put a tomato cage in it to help hold it up and all that. So it's a varietal thing. Some of these ones that are non-determinate, that just means they just keep growing and growing. And sometimes what we do with those is we'll actually install a bit of a little hoop or something that hangs above the plant and drop strings down to your plant and wrap it around the stem, and you grow them right up to about 8 feet high, and they produce just masses of tomatoes on those once they can get up tall like that.
Right.
So it's a varietal thing more than anything.
Okay. Well, I get my tomato seeds for free because when I buy tomatoes in the winter, I save some of the seeds.
Oh, okay.
And I grow my tomatoes from those, like beefsteaks. So
nice.
I've got seeds from ones that I purchased, hoping that they're ones that will grow. But I'm testing them right now to see what ones are actually going to grow before I pot them.
Yeah.
And what happened last year is I grow those little yellow ones, the little pear-shaped ones.
Yes, yeah.
And I had one of those beside, like the little patio, the little small cherry tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And the bees cross-pollinated those. And I got some tomatoes that were like hybrids between those two.
That's cool.
And so now I save seeds from those tomatoes.
Isn't that
And
cool?
I'm going to grow them to see if, maybe the seeds won't grow, but they might grow.
Yeah, well,
so
sure.
I thought I'd see what I'd get from them.
Yeah, why not? That's gardening, and that's fun, especially if you get something that's really cool.
Yeah,
it's a consistency that the when you buy the seeds, they always want them to all be the same that's in the package. And those are usually either open pollinated, so that means that there are varieties that come true from seed. So there are certain ones that do. And then the other ones are hybrids. So that just means, just like you've done, if you had those 2 different types and they've done it before, they know if you take the yellow and the red and you put them together, you get a sort of a pink colored tomato or something. Then that's a hybrid. So then they know they've cross-pollinated it, and they collect those seeds and put them in a package, and it's a pink tomato. So, but then when you take those seeds that have been cross-pollinated, they don't produce. They can go back to being yellow, or go back to being red, or they might be pink, or they might be something somewhere in between. And so that's the thing with those ones that are, once they're hybridized in any way or cross-pollinated, the seedlings from those will be just a mixture.
Oh, right.
But open pollinated varieties, like if you get one that's a beefsteak, and that's why Seedy Sunday is coming up on the 10th of March, and that's where all the seeding people go, and I'll be there as well speaking. But you can go in there, and some of the people who produce these seeds, they can describe to you and actually get you some varieties that will come true from seed each year as well. And it's kind of fun. They're very knowledgeable on that.
Right. And when is that, CD?
That's on the 10th of March. Which year is this?
10th of March, okay.
10th of March in the Kelowna area, or the 25th of February if you're in Victoria.
Okay, and what location?
In Kelowna, they are. It's going to be down at the Parkinson Rec Center.
Oh, okay. I'll try that because I'm in West Kelowna. So.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's super fun. I think West Kelowna also has one as well, but I participate in every one I can get to.
Yeah. Because
they'll have them on different weekends typically, and you get so many gardeners and stuff. It's really fun.
Oh, good. Okay, well, thanks for that.
All righty. Well, thanks so much for calling in. All righty. Bye-bye. There you go. All right, we're going to take another short break here, and we'll be back right after these messages with more of The Garden Show. Alrighty, we are back, and yes, it is seeding time soon. Again, off the top of the show, I was talking about seeding plants early because they're such a long crop that you have to get them in early so they get going, and those plants need to stay warm through the whole process. So if we seeded them today, we got to keep them going all the way into May and often to the end of May, depending where you are. Now, cold-loving plants. There's so many great cold-loving plants. There's just tons of them. I can just shoot off a quick list here of a few, like peas, radish, kohlrabi, lettuce, spinach, even potatoes are a cold plant. Any of the other regular cabbages, carrots, chard, onions, chives, broccoli, and cauliflower, beets, collard greens, kale, leeks, parsnips, rutabagas, arugula, parsley, radicchio, kaleette. That's a good one. That's a newer type of a plant. It's a really good one. And coriander, of course, thyme, oregano, summer savory, and chamomile. You know, a lot of those herbs are like that. Summer savory is sort of a little bit more of it'll get a little bit warmer. It takes a while to get going, but still, it generally can be germinated quite early. So with any of these plants, we can get them started indoors. I prefer to get them going inside rather than, say, going out into the garden, planting the seeds in cold soil. Like, I'd rather get them up and growing and get them a little bit healthy and rooted into maybe a small cell, like a 6-pack or something. Give them a little bit of size and then get them outside. And the other nice thing that I find about early planting is that there's not very many bugs around early on. And I think that's one of the strategies that these plants like to do is they like to get their foothold. They like to get their roots in and get growing before all the insects go nuts when you're into the month of May. So often a lot of these things, if we do get them started indoors and we get them out into the garden, we're often harvesting before May. And so, people say, oh, when do you plant your garden? It's like as soon as humanly possible. Get out there and get those plants in the ground so they can come up and do their thing and get sized up so you can be harvesting some lettuce, some spinach, that sort of thing right around the end of April. And then into early May, of course, then it's really going because then it really starts to warm up and potatoes are up and growing and lettuce. Like I say, all the cabbage families, anything that's related to cabbage, the brassicas are fabulous. They're all great to grow and love to be grown cold. So, it's always good to review a little bit. Some things, there's some timing issues, like I think with Brussels sprouts or something that even though they are a long season crop and whatnot, they're not always the best here in the Okanagan. Some people have good luck and some don't. It's a little too hot in the summertime, but they sort of prefer to be planted sort of in early May sort of timing outside, which is still a bit cool, and then they grow right through until the fall and then be harvested then. It's a long time to go, and of course, the number one trick, of course, is always covering, especially the brassica family, all these cabbage families, with the insect screen. And insect screen will keep all those pesky bugs off and keep the plants growing nice and healthy and happy. When it comes to Brussels sprouts, you need almost like a bag, a mesh bag to go over it, like an onion bag, but the super fine whole ones. I actually have some of those, but I need to get more. I need to get them bigger so that I can put it over an entire Brussels sprouts plant, and it's got a little pull string at the bottom, and the plant is sort of isolated, and that keeps all the bad bugs off. And all you have to worry about then is crawling insects, which diatomaceous earth is one of our favorite products to use for crawling insects, and especially on the brassicas and that sort of thing. Just to sprinkle a little bit of diatomaceous earth on those, and that keeps a lot of the insects at bay. So there you go. Wow, lots of stuff, eh? Now, onions, like we've talked about, even seeding onions as early as in January. And right now, I think we did a run right on the last week of January. We did some Kelsey's, the giant onions, and I'm not sure if we did Elsa Craig's and a couple other varieties. And, those ones are coming on. And right now, mine are maybe about 2.5 inches tall or so, maybe a bit more. And they're looking pretty good. And the other onions that we have, I think we did some leeks and a couple other varieties. Oh, the little green onions, scallions, and they're any of those things. They love to get growing early, so we're starting them indoors on the heated pads, getting them up and going, starting to feed them a little bit. And once they size up just a bit more, we like to see them get some actual girth to the stems. And usually we let them grow up to about 4 inches tall or so, maybe 5 inches, and then we trim them off with a pair of scissors down to about 1 inch tall. And then from there, that 1 inch tall little plant will branch out and form a real sturdy little onion plant that can be planted straight outside. So right at that point, as soon as you can get to that point where you've trimmed them off and they've started to grow back a little bit and you're starting to see it resembling an onion, then you can go ahead and get those straight out into the garden. And if it's still very cold, like they can freeze at night, they're okay with that. But sometimes it's nice to put like a little snow cap or something over them. Some people take milk jugs and cut the bottoms out of them and just place them over top of their plants to give them a little warm spot there to grow. And there's all kinds of things. Gardeners come up with all kinds of cool ideas. Having a cold frame is really just a real winning situation. If I'm sure a lot of gardeners know what a cold frame is, but it's literally just about anything that you can get. There'll be some sort of a frame that you could put plastic on, or maybe some glass, like an old window or something, and be able to lift it up, put your plants inside, and then let it back down. In the daytime, that lid can be open, and at night you close it down, and it just adds a little bit of buffer from hard frost. Light frost still gets in, but it keeps the hard frost out. So again, for these plants that like to be cold, there's nothing really better than a cold frame. So there you go. Nice to have. And all these plants I've talked about, and I know I just zoomed through that list super fast. With that list is available. I actually have done a few videos on YouTube in regards to cold crops, and so you can look that up if you like. And I'm sure I list them right on the screen, all the different types of things. But there's always more. There's so many different plants that like to grow when they're cold. The Kaolette and Radicchio are two really cool plants that I think Radicchio is sort of an older one that is it's not quite as common, but there are quite a few people who love to cook with it. So people who are a bit of foodies, they love to work with Radicchio. It's that kind of bright red, sort of miniature-looking little cabbage that is really quite colorful and lovely to cook with, and very, very interesting flavors. And Kaolette, which is, again, sort of a dwarf type of a kale plant that stays quite compact and produces many, many delicious leaves. So there you go. Lots of good plants that love to grow cold. And kale being one of those superfoods, you definitely want to get those in nice and early. And you can be harvesting before you get into May. And you can harvest all summer. The only thing, like I say, about some of the insects, like I'm not too worried about aphids because I can spray those off with a hose or just wash that product when you bring it in. Just give it a good rinse and you're good to go. But on some of the other things, like it's those looper caterpillars that really drive me nuts. And there's little beetles as well, it's like a little flea beetle sort of thing, and it gets on the leaves and makes a mess. So again, if you put the insect screens over these plants, they're nice and clean, no problems. So there you go. Yeah, so seeding, it's happening right now, and what I like to do is get out and to purchase those seeds, but I definitely keep them separated, so I have my cold plants in one category, and then my warm plants in the other category. So there's also a bunch of warm plants that we don't have to be in a big rush for, and that can be things like beans or squash or tomatoes. Like they grow quite fast. And I think all of those plants, I still get them started inside. Cucumbers, get them going inside in small containers and then put them outside once you get to about the end of May. It really is a good timing. The beans I like to get out a little earlier, somewhere around middle of May. But I still grow those beans, like I grow pole beans. And so I'll get those beans started in like 6-packs. Or maybe slightly bigger than a 4-pack. 4-pack is kind of ideal. It gives you like maybe an 1.5 by 1.5 little pocket of soil. And then, just a seed in each one. Get them on the heated bench. They pop up right away. The beans are always excited to get going. And then once they reach maybe about 3-4 inches tall, they're ready to go straight out into the garden. And I find that when I'm growing beans outside and I plant the seed, they have so many battles against insects and all kinds of sow bugs and all kinds of problems that come about, even some birds that come in and eat them when they shoot up. And it's one of these things that is a bit of a challenge. So I like to give them a little head start. And then when I first put them outside, I give them a little protection, like a little wire cage. It's more from the birds more than anything. Same with my peas. Like when I grow peas, even though you can plant them right now, they'll shoot up when it's warm enough. But I still like to get peas started inside. And then when they reach again about 3 or 4 inches high, I put them outside. And for me, it's the little house sparrows that come in and eat the tops of the peas. And so I put a little screen over them, like a little cage. I just have some fencing and cut a strip and put it over top of the peas, keeps the birds off and keeps those plants going until they really take off. It seems like the birds only like to eat the seedlings when they're little, so it's kind of a little bit of a battle there. But so with that, definitely get out into the garden as soon as you can, get some stuff in the ground, get it growing, and you'll be harvesting in no time, and getting the right plants in the right spots is key. But I was just talking about the warm things again real quick. There's warm plants you got to start early, and those are like peppers, the hot peppers, eggplants, peanuts, and maybe like broad beans would like to get started a little bit early. Then there's warm plants that just grow so fast you don't have to really get them going. So that was like the cucumbers, the squash, the tomatoes. Those plants just grow so fast, there really isn't much point in getting them out too early. And getting them in somewhere around the end of May. The professionals don't plant their tomatoes out till the first week of June because tomatoes, they don't like the cold soil. So they have to have that nice warm soil so they can really get going. So there's it's a bunch of tips. Hopefully there's some information there that you can gather. Remember to check Grower Coach on YouTube. Those are my videos. I've got all kinds of videos on planting vegetables and other things as well. So check that out when you get time. Alrighty, so we're going to take another short break here. You can give us a call. We have time for maybe one more call here after the break. 1-888 780-4273 or 250-862-2525. We'll be back right after these messages with more AM 1150 Garden Show. Alrighty, we're back with you talking about gardening as we do each Saturday morning at 8 a.m. ish. It's usually a few minutes after 8. every Saturday morning. That's Pacific time. But you can tune in on the internet as well. So if you're out of town, you can check us out on the internet. I think you look up AM 1150, and there are some connecting links there as well. You can also go to any of my videos online or growercoach.com, and generally you can get some information about linking up online to listen to The Garden Show on every Saturday morning. And lots of fun and lots of questions. So give us a call. Right now, we may have time for one more call. So if you're interested, if you have a question, you can always give us a shout, and I can do my best to answer. One thing that is something I'm going to try this year, I'm going to see what's available. But, they talk about seed potatoes. So when you buy, a bag of potatoes, and they've got little potatoes in it, and there's all different types of those as well. But those they call seed potatoes. But you can actually buy seed for potatoes, where you actually buy the seeds and you just plant them indoors, get them started indoors, just like all this we've been talking about, and grow them on. And, they can be quite successful, actually, and they can produce really well. The key is if you're buying them in a seed package, you can, again, pick the variety that suits your needs and requirements. That's generally the best way to go. And, just like a tomato plant in a way, except that you can get those going a little bit earlier. And remember that because they're up and out of the ground already, that you generally wouldn't plant those ones out until you get into early May at some point. And whereas the potatoes, when you buy the actual potato itself for planting out, you could plant those in just about any time. I usually try to put a run of potatoes in somewhere around the middle of March, and that's my early run. So I usually will buy early potatoes for that. And then you'll get mid-season potatoes as well. And so those ones you could plant some then, or you could plant them a little bit later if you like. And then the late potatoes are ones that will just keep on producing and producing. So this all has to do with the story of determinate and indeterminate. It's just like with tomatoes and potatoes are related, and they both are available in determinate or indeterminate. And determinate means that they're already determined how big they're going to grow and how long they're going to grow and how big the potatoes are going to be, or how big the tomato plant's going to be and the tomatoes. And then when they're done, they just stop producing. So that's a determinate plant. They don't just keep going and going. But the indeterminate ones, they don't really know when to stop. They just keep on going. So those are potatoes that you would hill. And you often hear people say, oh, you got to hill your potatoes. Well, you only got to hill the potatoes if they're indeterminate varieties that keep on producing. Because if they're not, they're not going to benefit from hilling if they already are determinate and they're only going to produce so much and then stop. And with tomato plants, you got to know that as well, because, I tend to like to grow the indeterminate varieties so that they just produce and produce and produce. And I can even steal potatoes, out of those ones, mound them up, steal some potatoes out of the sides of the mound, and just keep them going right into the fall, and then dig the plants up maybe in September or so. So I get multiple harvests off the same plants through the season. So it's something each person, has to try different things. And the only way, like with tomato plants, like I know on our website on Grower Coach in the articles, I produced a couple articles there on determinate and indeterminate varieties, particularly potatoes. But on the bags, when you buy the potatoes, it doesn't say determinate or indeterminate. It says early. That's determinate. It's not going to grow forever and ever. It's going to stop somewhere along the way. Then there are the mid-season ones, which most of those are also determinate, and they'll grow to a certain size and then stop. And there may be one or two that go a little bit longer. But then the late-season ones, late-season potatoes are indeterminate. And those are the ones you hill, and those are the ones that you can get multiple crops off of and just keep them going. And they don't know when to stop. It's like me and talking. I just don't know when to stop. I just keep going. But with the tomato plants are great that way. A lot of the beefsteaks are, not all of them, but a lot of them are indeterminate. That means you can just grow and grow and grow, and they just keep producing more and more and more little tomatoes all the way through into the fall. And you get all those green tomatoes in the fall that you're still harvesting. And that's because those are indeterminate varieties. If they were determinate, there would be no tomatoes on there by the fall. So it's really, if you're growing a certain way, you may really appreciate having a determinate variety. Most of the commercial varieties that are grown, they'll often grow determinate varieties, because then they know, well, when one's ready, they're all ready, and we harvest them, and they're all a uniform size. They're all about similar sort of stage of growth. So they're really good for commercial growers. And, if it says it's 60 days to harvest, they can pretty much count on it being right in that range, and they can get in there and get those potatoes or tomatoes harvested all at once. They do the whole crop, and then they get plowed in, and away they go. So with determinate ones, or indeterminate ones, they're going to be sporadic, and they may not be all coming on at once. So you could see how a commercial guy, farmer, would probably rather have those ones that all come on at one time. So there you go. All right. So again, I wanted to talk just a little bit again about the cilantro, because like in coastal areas, in Victoria area, you can grow cilantro pretty much any time. But here in the Okanagan, we have to get it going early. It's very, very important. So, but we do have a caller on the line. We have Ronnie on the line. Good morning, Ronnie from Victoria.
Hi. I was wanting to know something about the potatoes. So if it's a determinate, I always thought early meant that they were a shorter growing, not that they were, and they would be ready earlier, not that they were determinate or indeterminate.
Yeah.
So if I'm planting those, and I'm planting them in one of those potato grow bags,
yep.
Do I plant them down at the bottom and then just keep putting more soil on the same as I would as if I was hilling them if they were in the ground?
No, they don't. They don't require hilling. So what I do, like if I'm putting them in a grow bag or in a container, I kind of put them halfway in so they can grow down and up.
Okay.
And they'll produce a crop of potatoes, but you'll see the plants will just turn yellow one day and shrivel.
Yeah.
And that's when it's ready to harvest. So it tells you, they're done. Must be time to harvest. So then you dig them out, and they're all the same size, and it's very
so
convenient.
Early and mid-season, then I put them halfway down the bag and then fill the rest of the bag up.
Right.
And then with the indeterminate, I put them down at the bottom and then just keep layering as the greens come up?
Yeah, I still put them about 3 or 4 inches off the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Because they will produce some down below and some around the sides, but they'll keep growing upwards as well, just because, especially when they're in a container, they kind of tend to hit the sides and grow upwards a little bit.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah. No,
that's excellent information. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you for calling.
Bye.
All right,
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. There you go. And, it's getting there. We're going to be in the garden soon, and it's going to be just awesome. I just want to remind everybody that it is the Central Okanagan Heritage Society week this week, Heritage Society or Heritage Week, and so it starts today. And keep your eyes peeled. You can go in online and just check COHS. And it'll pop up, and that's the Central Okanagan Heritage Society, and it'll give you some ideas of what events are happening throughout this week. And there's all kinds of things, especially on Family Day on Monday. They're going to be having all kinds of events and breakfasts and all that kind of thing. So great for the kids to get out and see where we all came from, and just a whole lot of fun for sure. So check that out. And again, remember that next weekend here in Kelowna, the Kelowna Garden Club is putting on their 100th anniversary special extravaganza. And so Gardening into the Future is what it's called. And there's going to be many vendors there, so you can just show up and wander through and enjoy the vendors and the information and the camaraderie of all the gardeners. The master gardeners, of course, will be there. And lots of great information. And there'll be speakers as well. And if you want to participate in the speakers and the lunch, you have to go to Eventbrite and purchase your ticket from them. And it's $50 and includes all the speakers and includes the lunch as well. So it's kind of a fun thing. And it's going to be a good one. So check that out. That's next Saturday, the 24th. All right. So on that note, we're going to go to the tip of the week. And my tip of the week this week was just what we've been talking about all the way along here, which is that the game plan right now is to make sure that all your late crops, plants that are in the vegetable garden that are very late in the season, you often need to get them started early. So those long growing vegetables, you might want to get them started now. And my plant of the week this week was the peanut plant, which is always kind of fun to try and grow some peanuts. The kids really like them. Kind of an unusual thing, but you get those started early as well. And you buy the seeds just like you buy normal seeds, and you can get those started. Follow the directions on the package, and it'll tell you what to do. So that's it for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's been a fabulous show. I really enjoy talking about gardening anytime. So tune in again next week for more of The Garden Show.